My name is Rabbi Michael Beyo. I am the rabbi and CEO of the East Valley JCC, which is the organization that has put up this program for this afternoon. And if it would not have been for COVID, we would have had David with us in Phoenix today, but hopefully we will be able to invite him to do another performance live for us here in Phoenix next year. David is a very accomplished actor and singer, has performed off-Broadway shows for many years, performed both as an actor as a singer on many stages. And one of the things that he does wonderfully is to take classical plays and give them a spin. Spin can be a Sephardic spin like today, but it's like a Jewish spin. And that is very important for us because then we can discuss both the play itself, but also the relevancy for us as Jews. So without further ado, I welcome David and thank you very much for agreeing to be with us this afternoon. And let me start with one question, and then please everybody feel free. We are a small group right now, so feel free to ask David the questions as we move forward. But let me start with a question. Man, I grew up in Italy, as I mentioned earlier. I was born in Italy, and even though Shakespeare was not an Italian author, but I grew up with the thought of, the Merchant of Venice. And it was only later on in my, when I was already in college, that somebody mentioned to me, the play is not really anti-Semitic. In fact, the play, they say to me, is so not anti-Semitic because the sentence that says, am I not bleeding? Am I not, the famous line. So again, I want to bring it back to you, David. Do you think this play is anti-Semitic? And then I'll tell you what I think. Please.
Well, first of all, my dear Michael, I want to tell you how much I really appreciate you, how much I admire you for all the great work that you're doing. It's really an honor for me to be here today by your side with the beautiful people, with the wonderful people of your community. And I'm so grateful to everyone who has watched this show. So thank you, Michael. Really.
Thank you.
So for me, I always say that God, the good God, gave us two ears. It's not to listen just one way. It's to listen also the other way, and then with our brain, we do, we do the judge of like the balance, So as soon as I read The Merchant of Venice, everybody told me, oh, it's an anti-Semitic play, especially in France, oh, it's an anti-Semitic play. Shakespeare was anti-Semite. Even I heard like people we haven't interviewed him, they talk like they know him, and as soon as I read the play, I thought not only it was not anti-Semitic, but more than that, it was against anti-Semitism, because the monologue of, and after I will tell you a little story of how that monologue, this is a legend, but I believe there is truth to it. The monologue had not a Jew eyes, had not a Jew hands, organs, dimensions, all this stuff, the way it is built. And originally, if you will look at the video, I'm supposed to say to Serero, to the other guy who is with me on the stage, but instead I turned and I spoke to the audience directly. I broke what we call the fourth wall, the wall where we talk directly to where I was talking directly to the audience. So I believe not only it's not an anti-Semitic play, but it's against anti-Semitism. Now, this play, The Merchant of Venice, was inspired from another play, which people should know also. It's written by Christopher Marlowe, and it's called The Jew of Malta, where the lead character is Barabbas. Barabbas, it depends how you say it. And Barabbas is considered as a Jewish villain, and he was inspired from Shylock, sorry, from Shakespeare to write the part of Shylock, you know. But I played Barabbas also, and it's very, very different from Shylock. You know, Shylock, he's an ordinary man, and as a matter of fact, at the beginning of the play, he wants to make peace with his friend, with his Christian friend. He's like, you hurt me, you spit on me. This is why at the beginning of the play I put that the other guy is spitting on him. This was not written, but I added it so that people can understand where Shylock comes from. So he said, I will lend you money, no problem. And the pound of flesh for me was a joke, you know, like a pound of flesh, you know, let's do it as a joke, you know. But then after, he talks about revenge. Why? Because he has lost all his boundaries. He has lost everything that he owns, you know. So of course he comes back to money sometimes when he says his daughter escaped, and the first thing is, you know, first thing he thinks is about the diamond. You know, it cost me 4,000 ducats in Frankfurt, you know. So there is a little bit of that, you know, but I can tell you once, you know, I was on the bike, you know, when I was a child, and I went fast and I broke the bike. The first thing my dad said, he said, you destroyed the bike. He didn't ask if I was hurt or anything, you know. So, you know, sometimes Jewish fathers were a little bit like that, you know. But I absolutely do not believe that this is an anti-Semitic play. What I would like also to tell you is that there is a lot of theories, but Shakespeare was married to a Jewish woman. You know, her last name was Hathaway. You know, Anne Hathaway, like the actress, her name was Anne Hathaway. It is believed that after Barabbas, after the Jew of Malta had so much hate against Jews, that the father of Anne Hathaway, who was a very wealthy man, came to Shakespeare and told him, listen, like basically make us look good a little bit. And Shakespeare would have added that monologue, "I have not the Jew eyes." You know, we don't have any proof, but it's something that's been said on. The last thing I want to tell you, Michael, is that there is also that theory of Shakespeare was not really Shakespeare, etc., etc. So what it is said is that there was that man called Edward de Vere, you know, who was the Count of, I think it was Essex or something like that. And what happened is that this guy is believed to be the man who is Shakespeare. He has written all the plays, but he was not allowed to go to theater. So there is a great movie that everyone should watch called Anonymous. It's about actually Shakespeare and all of that. So, and he brought this play to Shakespeare, who had an acting troupe of actors, you know, and so he brought him all of that. And actually, this Edouard de Vere went to Verona, you know, he went to Venice, he went to Padua, exactly where the plays of Shakespeare take place, you know. And what happened with the Merchant of Venice is that Edouard de Vere had invested in a lot of what we call ship, basically, who were going to the Indies, who were going to some places, and they were making money. So a lot of merchants were investing money on these ships. Then the ships were going there, then come back, they were selling what they have, and the people were making money from it, you know. So there was that guy named Michael Lock, L-O-C-K, Michael Lock, who had these very big ship, and he had indeed an Argosy, you know. All his ship was gone and lost at sea, you know. And it was after said that he basically was a scam, you know. He on purpose took the money and he had no intentions to go where he was supposed to go. And, you know, Edouard de Vere had invested 3,000 ducats, 3,000 ducats. And he called the character of Shylock shy because in those days, someone who was shy was someone dishonest, you know. So the character Shylock comes from that. And that is a very strong theory because there are a lot of proof and is very supported. And also there is the Hebrew version of Shylock and a lot of a different origin. So to answer to your question, my dear Michael, I really do not think that it is and anti-Semitic. And if someone grows angry or a villain, you know, it doesn't mean that if people call him a villain, it's not necessarily because he's Jewish. It's also because of his actions. You see, for example, what's his name, Bernie Madoff, you know, and we say that he is a crook or a criminal. There's nothing anti-Semitic to it, I believe, you know, because what he has done is wrong to the regards of the law, I believe. So that's my modest opinion.
But let me ask you another question then.
Yeah.
It is clear that the job of the moneylender was as a result of laws that prevented, on the one hand, Christians from money lending, and on the other hand, it was a way to use the Jews as a scapegoat for whenever the rulers or the community wanted. So it was a double-edged sword, being the moneylender. Now, that was one reason why, you know, Jews went into banking and all of that. It's right.
It's not a bad case, you know.
No, nothing bad, nothing bad. But the position, the job of the moneylender is a result, in part, of also anti-Semitic laws.
Mm-hmm.
And when this play takes place in Venice, where it was the first ghetto, what is your interpretation of the combination of these things?
Well, you know, it is what it is at some point, because every country, every nation has a past, you know, and we have to learn from that past, you know. By the way, it's Napoleon who freed the Venice ghetto, you know,
Yep.
Because I'm preparing a big stuff about Napoleon. And so I do not believe, I mean, it's okay that Jews were money lenders. I don't think it was something that has to go with anti-Semitism. I rather that we associated with money than we associated with, God forbid, cocaine or murders or something like that. You see, I have a friend from Colombia, you know, the country Colombia, and they tell me, you have no idea. Every time we say we're from Colombia, people think about narcos and Pablo Escobar and all this stuff. So I don't think there is anything wrong for Jews to be associated with money, because there is a truth to it. Not only we have a history with it, but when you look at a lot of the strongest businessmen, a lot of the strongest people in finance or in stock market, they are Jews. So we should be proud of this heritage that we have gone through. Of course, it went through some, you know, pain and sorrows and grievings, but I think it's part of our history. You know, each person, including each people, each community, is always the result of an equation. You know, it's a 5 + 6 - 2 × 3, etc. If you remove one single thing from the equation, we wouldn't be the same. Jews would have been so strong, so successful, doing so many things without the Holocaust, without the anti-Semitism. You know, it's a question that we should ask, because you have a lot of countries who didn't have these terrible things that we have experienced, you know, and we don't hear about them, you know. So I think it is part of our history that we should always, like you're doing, Michael, make sure that this history never repeats itself, you know. But also, I think it's part of us, and the play shows it, that it really points the finger that, hey, I lend you the money gratis. Shylock says that. I give you the money without any interest, just to show you that there is no, I would say, no beef between us, you know.
Thank you. One more question, then, you know,
Absolutely.
please, I would love to hear from everybody else.
Absolutely.
How do you think that non-Jews look at this play and the figure of Shylock, the figure of the Jew, how do you think that in current today, in current very divisive atmosphere here in America, where even among the Jewish people, the Jewish community is very extremely divided at the moment. What would be this play like? Do you think that this play has something to teach us today?
Absolutely, Michael. I'm very glad you're asking that question. Well, the way we will see that play in Europe and the way we will see that play in America is very two different things. You know, I really believe that. I give you an example. There is actually a great book, not that I wish to advertise it, but it's basically a book that is called "Because I Am a Jew: The Truth Behind Shylock," where they interviewed. It was written by Center for Shakespeare Studies, where they interviewed many different Jewish actors who have played the part of Shylock. So what basically I would like, and I have a chapter in it, that's the reason why I wanted to mention it, because the way I did Shylock back in Europe and the way I did it in America is very two different things. In Europe, we really feel what happened with the Germany, with the Nazis, you know, what happened with Hitler. We really feel it. And there is that really like this back memory that is hard to bring. It's a little bit when in America people talk about white slavery, you know, so it makes people very uncomfortable because, you know, it's not us, it's people from before, and why should we be held responsible or accountable for it because it's from before, etc., etc. In America, people, when I played it, really enjoyed it. The part of it is really because I didn't bring Shylock as a villain. Because when you look at it, Shylock is the most honest man in the play. He was offered 3 times the money. 3 times the money. Tell me one person who wouldn't take 3 times the money. First, who will give it for free to, I would say, to his, who he calls his enemies. And number 2, who will accept it for 3 times the money, you know, but he stays to his principle, especially after he has lost all that he had. Right? Not only revenge is useless, and you should always go by the law, and we are all equal toward the law. So I hope people see that play as also a love story between a father who has lost everything, including his own pride. This is also what I wanted to show in that very important play, which is, I believe, a great educational tool, not just against anti-Semitism, but against hate speech and against also the fight, man against man, you know, because we see at the end, Shylock lost everything, you know. And what was interesting is that play always has been under the comedy section. It was a comedy by Shakespeare, you know. On the original folio, it's written Merchant of Venice, a comedy, you know. And the Jew of Malta, by example, was a tragedy. It was a drama. It was a true drama. So I really hope that people will see this very important play, not just, you know, for the purpose of anti-Semitism, but also as a general important education for all humankind, hopefully, you know.
Thank you, David. You mentioned a lot of things, you touched upon a lot of topics.
Yeah.
I would love to see if anybody has any question or comments to what David said, so that we can engage in a truly Jewish debate.
Okay, first I have to say hello to Sarah and Ann. Hi, Sarah. I hope you got the note. Hi, Ann. David, you started this conversation by saying that you would do it differently today.
Yeah.
I would like to hear very much how you would do it differently.
Oh, absolutely. Well, first of all, I would do it differently in the acting, you know, in the singing. It was mostly about that, but the meaning will always stay the same. What I would do today is that I will add a little bit more. I would try really to add a little bit more diversity. The only thing I would do at the end would be to bring Michael on stage, you know.
Thank you. Any?
Yeah, I'd like to ask specifically about the character Shylock.
Sure.
You know, Shylock in and of itself, and you mentioned, David, how Shylock may have gotten the name, you know, shy, meaning like shyster, that type of thing, and the lock, you mentioned all that. But Shylock itself has become synonymous with anti-Semitism. Whether the play is anti-Semitic or not, that the character Shylock is synonymous with anti-Semitism. Even the Nazis used it as propaganda. But what I want to ask you is, in your portrayal of him, you know, typically Shylock is portrayed, you know, with the hooked nose,
Yeah.
in red with a red hat. And I know in this performance you were wearing red, like a burgundy color. What, in your experience, what is the you know, the performance of Shylock, the way the costuming and the character himself, how does that portray anti-Semitism?
How is what? I didn't hear.
How is the anti-Semitism portrayed through the depiction or the characterization of Shylock?
Oh, well, you know, in those days when the play was created in the Elizabethan theater, they used a lot of what we call symbolism, you know. So let's say if I'm walking like this, you know, then I'm an old person, you know. If I'm like this, it means I'm a happy person all the time, you know. So if my face is painted in black, it means I'm a stranger, I'm a foreigner, you know. This is why we're talking about Othello. People said Othello is racist, but Othello was not black. Othello was a Muslim, you know, from Morocco, and actually did, and perhaps Michael will see that next time, I did an adaptation of Othello as Moroccan Jewish, you know. So anyway, so that's for Othello. So they use the nose in those days for, it was more symbolic to show, oh, he's Jewish, you know, and I'm sure in those days, with the paintings that we have of the first Shylocks, they were like this, you know. You know, and at some point I tried, but I'm doing a little bit of it, you know. And if you look, my feet, you know, they are always moving. You know, I was always moving, and even someone thought that I hurt my leg, and this is why sometimes, you know, because I wanted to show that inside my heart is beating like this, but I'm trying to content it. So I really don't think that there is really a very specific way of the costume and everything. I would say the most honest to the reality would be you know, like it would be like a red thing with a yellow round, because this is what Jews were wearing, a yellow round, and a red hat on their face. So in that case, I wanted to do it a little bit more Sephardi, you know, not that we're known for our fashion talents, you know, but that was the idea of the everyday, the average Joe, you know, who wants to make peace, who I didn't see Shylock, of course, as a hero. He is not, you know, someone who saves the world, but as someone who is very honest, fighting for his name, you know, and even in a way, I would say, challenging the state, you know, challenging the state. And he says, I have an oath. He's very spiritual. He's very connected to God. He says, I have an oath an oath to God. He says, should I lay perjury on my soul? He said, no, not for Venice. You know, and this is when he is in the court. So there are so many ways. That's the beauty of Shakespeare and all the theaters of these days. So many ways to portray. I've seen some productions where people were dressed. Shylock was dressed like almost like I am, with a regular blazer. There are so many different costume appearance to do it, with the long beard. I saw very religious, almost like a rabbi. You know, it's like, not like a rabbi, but like a rabbi look. I would say like a Hasidic look in a way. There is no particular way. You know, that's the way I put it. The knives also was something that people told me a lot, that he was really cutting. He really wanted to cut that flesh, you know. And every time I do a show, I kind of inspire myself from a very from an era, you know, but I add stuff from the outside also. So I'm never set into a really particular time period. So I did that production in 2015, but I did it again in 2016. And what I did in 2016 is that I brought Jerry Springer, you know, going with some cards and making the confrontation between Portia and her beloved about the ring and what the ring, you know, and the audience participation is really great also. But this one is really this production is the most honest to, I believe, the origin of the show.
David, if I may, as a Sephardi Jew, how is your approach to your work, to Shakespeare and to Anne Frank, different than your Ashkenazi colleagues?
Yeah, well, you know, for many years, especially in America, Jewish theater was an Ashkenazi thing, you know, with the Yiddish theater, and righteously so, because it's really good. You know, Yiddish theater is it's really part of the American culture core, really. And I played some of the Yiddish stuff, not in Yiddish, obviously, in English, but because I speak Yiddish like I'm an astronaut, you know. So, you know, and it's so funny. And from that, you had the Marx Brothers, and from that, you had Woody Allen, and from that, Mel Brooks, and all these guys, you know. So it's really the core and the origin of the culture. So when I arrived in America, I have these, of course, very pure classical training, you know, where I studied opera in Russia, in St. Petersburg, very strict, like military style. In France, you know, with the French aristocracy, and, you know, and also, you know, I grew up watching all these Sephardic, Moroccan stand-up comedian and theater play, where they were talking directly to the audience, you know, making the audience participate. So I have two strong culture. So, and I try to bring both of them. And after all, you know, maybe this is what is Sephardic theater. It's the chutzpah thing, in a way, to bring, I would say, to break rules in a way, to create something different. So maybe the difference is I'm not afraid to try. Of course, the last thing I want is upset the audience. So I always do some tryouts before, where in Merchant there was no real risk, but when I had stuff with comedy, I do tryouts before. I want to try the jokes. I want to try all of that, and yeah. Also, I don't want to do the 3-hour thing. You know, I want to make it an hour 15 at the most, and add music. You know, add music of the era, Ladino songs of the era, the Adio Querida, where he sings it like Shylock is missing his daughter, of course. Shakespeare didn't add this music in his original, so I added it. But it was, at the end, the Shalom Aleichem closes with what he started, So it's very different, but I want to do more with the American Sephardi Federation in New York City. We did, the Merchant of Venice, Othello, Romeo and Juliet, which I did last season. So what I did, I took one Ashkenazi family and one Sephardic family, I say Romeo and Juliet. And Juliet, I wrote it Jew, like Juliet, and this was so successful. And the Ashkenazi family was singing Yiddish music, Sephardic family was singing Sephardi stuff, Ladino, etc. And both of them singing together, and it was very, very successful. I hope we will do it also with you, Michael. And
absolutely, yes.
And, it's especially in New York, there is that Yiddish thing. So I wanted to bring also my Sephardic take on it, which includes, Don Rickles, Sinatra, Dean Martin, but also Laurence Olivier, Al Pacino, De Niro, all these guys, the Globe Theater and opera,
Yeah, trust me, at our JCC, I bring a lot of my Sephardi heritage.
I don't know one person you wouldn't bring, Michael. That's the thing. You're such a lovable person.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments from our friends?
There is a little bit of a link to the Merchant of Venice from a Sephardic standpoint, and that is that the Dr. Lopez,
oh yeah,
who was Queen Elizabeth's physician,
Right.
was a Portuguese Jew,
Right.
and that's believed to have a profound impact on Shakespeare in writing the play.
Yeah, because he was accused of poisoning the queen. So a lot of people, blame him for that. But in those days, the doctor who was treated someone who was very notable, if that person was dying, they were accused of of being the murderer or conspiracy. So the doctors were always saying, please don't die on me, I'm begging you, for God's sake, So I can only imagine that, what the Dr. Lopez must have gone through. So yes, there was that in the air. But you have to understand that at that time, Bruce, in England, there was barely above 100 Jews living in London. So we're not even sure that Shakespeare, whoever we think is the real Shakespeare, is not a debate, but Shakespeare has even met a single Jew, like he's doing the play of Padua with Coming of the Shrew, the Two Gentlemen of Verona, all this stuff. He's the other Shakespeare has never been to Italy, and most of these people have never traveled. It's not like it is today where you have Wi-Fi and you can see how it is over there.
David, not only that, but he makes references to the Bible, and certainly some Genesis references to Jacob and some other. Where did that come from? And if he hardly knew any Jews, how did he know anything about the Old Testament?
That's what's so amazing about what we know of Shakespeare, is that people believe that Shakespeare was a bunch of three people, which also includes Christopher Marlowe, and who wrote The Jew of Malta, which
Francis Bacon is another one.
Yeah. Right. So, and as a matter of fact, I think it's I forgot which play. I think it's Henry the Sixth or something. I forgot which play. Henry the Fourth. I forgot which one. Where Christopher Marlowe was officially recognized as one of the co-writers with, but if you read The Jew of Malta, you will see a lot of reference to the Bible, to the Torah, but also in Shylock, at some point he says, "Oh, Father Abraham," you know. So in many times on the Marlowe on Chuamata he used oi, you know, oi da 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 oi, but it's written A Y, you know. But I don't think he meant I, you know.
Well, you know, I was even reading just the other day that the quality of Mercy's speech
Oh,
is taken, the very beginning's taken from the Parsha from last week, from Nitzavim. So where does he come up with that? I mean, you know, if he,
it's unbelievable.
it's
I know.
unbelievable. Well, how we can answer that, I don't know. But
It's unbelievable. I mean, the way it is written is absolutely unbelievable. Same way when we listen to an opera, we're like, how did Mozart write this opera alone? I mean, today with computers, it's very, very difficult. And these people, they had to write and imagine all the orchestra and all the, you see, we're talking about the Torah and the sun came through my window. You see? So God is with us today. God is with us. Michael, you know, God is with us. So let me send you my Chase account. You know? No,
That's
but
funny.
it's the quality of mercy. This is why this play should be, and I believe it is already, should be studied by a lot of lawyers, you know, because it teaches us, and a lot of judges. And actually, there was a very strong, you know, the Shylock appeal with the judge, the justice, what's her name, Ginsburg,
Mm.
you know, where she pardoned Shylock, you know. It's so interesting. We have, of course, we don't know what happened in Shakespeare's mind when he wrote all of that, but I keep thinking about this Edouard de Vere, who had studied the law, who had studied all of that, who grew up in a very privileged um, settings, you know, where he was able to take from all the books the quality of mercy, who had that piece, you know, in his head. And Shakespeare was more like, hey, how are you? You know, he was described more as someone like that. And Edouard de Vere was more an aristocrat. He was more, so his space comes more from the quality of mercy. And you have to also remember that in those days, women were not allowed to perform on stage. So all the female part that you see, whether it's, you know, even Romeo and Juliet, all this stuff, the person who was playing the woman was usually a teenager, you know, or a young male adult, you know. So, which is very interesting. And I tried that. I tried with the male adult to see how I would act, and it's very, very different. You know, when you have to call someone a woman who is not a woman, it makes things very different. You don't go as close. You keep, you know, it's very, very interesting. Also, what you have to know, and few people know that, is that in those days, people were not necessarily memorizing by heart the whole play. So they had someone in front of them, and on their back there was the text written, you know, and they were reading like this. So things were very, very, very different. But let me tell you, I really, the people who memorize by heart the whole play of the Jew of Malta, because the language is very different from the one of Shakespeare, believe it or not, is really, really difficult, because in one phrase it's like hieroglyph, you know, it's really, really very, very difficult. So yeah, the quality of mercy is one of the most famous speeches of all time, you know, and we need that, because with all that cancel culture that there is these days, you know, we forgot the number one rule almost that we have with Jews, but also that is with Christians, which is redemption. What happened to redemption? What happened when someone does a mistake and say, I learned from my mistake, you know, tell me how I can fix it. Let me be a better person from now on, you know, and move to something else. And no, they go after their jobs, they go after, you know, for simply just a tweet. Like, we are at the time when people were really murdering other people. What is a tweet compared to that? You know, and the quality of mercy has such a great, should have a great impact on people today. I really, really believe so, because it teaches us this redemption also, that we should forgive one another. This is what she says to Shylock. Forgive him, because then after you become the bad guy, you know, and this is what happens, and he gets punished by it, you know. And again, you remember when I said we're all one ball, then it's pushed to the extreme, then it explodes, and we are all, you know, against each other. Well, that's what happens also in the play, in a way, because everybody was together, they were doing businesses, and then it went all over the place, you know. Even Shylock is excluded from his own community, you know. So it has so many symbols to today's. So, and I really hope younger generation will be able to look at The Merchant of Venice as a absolutely not anti-Semitic play.
David, I thank you very, very much. I learned a lot today, and I hope that it was as interesting for everybody else as it was for me. You know, you mentioned something about redemption. So, you know, for a few days before Rosh Hashanah, I think that it's a proper time to end on this topic of redemption, that we should all have an introspection into our behavior, and so that we can improve ourselves and be humble and treat everybody with respect, and try to improve ourselves as human beings and as Jews. So once again, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I want to thank David. And if you like this program, please check out other programs of the East Valley JCC. And we love the fact that we have people from all over America that have joined us today. Thank you very, very much. And I hope to see you again in other programs of the East Valley JCC. Shana Tova, Tizku Leshanim Rabot, Neimot Vetovot. May you have a blessed year.